What's up, guys? So, I made this new friend here in Miami, and we were having a conversation recently that stuck with me. We were talking about being the bigger person, right? This expression of like having to be the bigger person, having to take the high road with people. And I don't remember what context this was referring to, but I remember saying basically that I feel like I often have to be the bigger person with people. And it bothers me that I feel like I always have to be like, whether it's like family stuff, friends, right, dating, professional stuff. I feel like I'm often in a position where I feel like I end up having to be the mature one who, like, grins it and bears it. And this new friend said something really interesting. She said, well, if you feel like you're always having to be the bigger person, maybe you should stop being around little people. And I thought this was like such a clever thing to say, that if you're around people where you have to be that way, then that says something, right? Like about those people. And I think that's true. I do think in general I meant more quantity, like, of people versus like specific people always having to be the bigger person with them. But it sort of made me think like, well, if I'm always feeling that way, then why do I even have that many people in my life who I'm always needing to be the bigger person with, where I'm left with that reaction, right? And this was really interesting timing wise that this new friend said this, because a few weeks ago I actually finally pulled the plug on a somewhat toxic friendship, for this very reason, that I felt like with this friend, I always had to like walk on eggshells because she blows up at everything. Not just me, but other people. I noticed she was very reactive, and it was exhausting to be around that kind of energy and have to like mentally prepare for that every time I hang out with her. And of course, the natural response to this, right, would be like, well, why would you hang out with somebody like that? But when you have an emotional connection to somebody, when you have a loyalty to somebody, or you feel a loyalty to somebody because of them having been a good friend to you in the past, or for whatever reason, it's a long friendship, you've invested in that connection. And I think this applies to everything. I think it applies to romantic relationships too. Like, people will say, why don't you leave, and this abusive partner, and I think people miss the nuance that when you're emotionally connected to somebody, suddenly it's not so black and white, right? With any kind of toxic dynamic. But anyway, this like stop hanging out with little people thing was really interesting to me as a way to frame it. And obviously there's exceptions to that. Like if we're talking about family, or like a professional thing, like your boss, right? You can't just cut people out like that. Obviously you can look for a new job, but in the meantime, or you can slowly start to distance yourself from certain family members. But obviously people who are like difficult to be around, if there's a connection with them where you're required to be around them to some extent, that you can only do so much. But I thought this whole thing was really interesting, and the last few days I've been dealing with a professional situation that's been really, really getting to me, which is, I think as some of you guys know, I work in social media, I work with influencers, and a good portion of social media influencers, content creators are very difficult to work with. Like they can be total divas. They're unpleasant. They're not known for professionalism, right? Just like any really content creator in life, right? Like musicians, actors, people in entertainment are known to be sort of mercurial and precarious. And I think a lot of that is because creative people don't typically have to be business minded, and a lot of them have never had a regular job, right? So it's like there's more entitlement, in my observation, more sort of like a lack of understanding of what's appropriate and how you communicate with people, right? Whereas if you're used to working for a corporation, or like you've been employed before, typically you have more sort of experience and training and humility in terms of like, this is what's appropriate in terms of communication, this is what's not appropriate. So anyway, I've been dealing with this frustrating situation with this influencer who has been really rude to me, and it was really bothering me. And then again, I thought of what my new friend said, that if somebody's making you feel consistently like almost like you're dealing with a child, That's not normal. Like that's not a hell. If you're dealing with a grown adult who behaves like a child, in terms of like you have to constantly adjust your behavior for them, or you have to walk on eggshells, that's not normal. Like that's not healthy. And I think that we, at least I, normalize certain things when you're used to dealing with that, whether it's professionally or relationships in your personal life. Like if you constantly see that theme, you normalize that when it's actually not normal behavior. And this is the nature of the beast, I think, from our modern day of using dating apps and everything's online and even working from home professionally. Like people are, I love this phrase, keyboard warriors, right? Like behind their screens, people will say crazy stuff that they would never say in person, right? And I feel like as a society, we've normalized a lot of this because it's just the era we live in. What do you guys think about this?